Welcome to the SWBL podcast presented by 1356 Public House. And we are back for our second installment of our top 22 player rankings. We're going to dive into players 15 through 6, and then our final episode will be the top 5 rounding out this series. With me tonight, again, as always, is Sam Skibby, our commissioner, and he's going to be breaking it all down for us. And before we kind of jump in, Sam, how's the weather been treating you? How's
Um,
life?
well,
You ready?
the ice day happened today, so school was canceled for my wife, and it was also canceled for my children. So my wife was not happy about that, as she had to pretty much stay home with the children anyway while I worked. But it's funny, Brian, because it's been 2 snow days so far for Parkway, and I've had to work on both of them. So welcome to the real world for sure.
Hmm.
It hits you hard on those snow days when all you want to do is play.
Yeah. Does the cold weather make you does it start to really put an itch in for wiffle ball weekend with the warmer weather? Does it affect you at all? Do you
Just
start thinking forward to it, I guess?
it's just winter in general, Brian. Winter is the worst, absolute worst. I am not a cold weather guy. So many people are. My eldest son Jackson, he loves the cold weather, and Gus is another one, loves the cold weather. And I think they're both crazy, absolutely crazy. So I don't know about you. I'm just a warm weather guy all the way.
I honestly, if I have to choose between hot or cold, I'm going to go cold.
Ugh,
I don't
no.
like to sweat unless I'm supposed to be sweating. So I don't like to, you know, leave my house in August and by the time I get to the office feel like I need a shower again. It's
That's
gross.
true. Well,
Um,
wiffle ball definitely on the
but
horizon and
yeah,
something that you look forward to when it's cold for sure. But I think, there's a lull. There's always that lull right after the season. It's kind of like after the SWBL season is over, my focus turns to the national scene. It turns to the NWLA tournament, turns to United Wiffle. And then after United Wiffle, it's like a hiatus from wiffle ball altogether for like a good 3 months. And then it hits like December, maybe late November, and you're like, you get the itch back for sure. You start planning, and that's when I really do the bulk of my, planning in the winter is November, December, and then it's pretty much wiffle ball every day from January till SWBL again.
yeah. Well, thanks for taking some time out of your busy planning
Of
season
course.
to do this with me. So, like I said, guys, we're gonna jump into our top 22 countdown real quick. I did want to shout out our sponsors. Um, we've got again, like I said, 1356 Public House, as you can see there in Sam's background. They are a presenting sponsor once again this year. We've got Cutting Eye Center back. Four Hands, Logix, Ballast Dental Care, Spencer Gear, Breck Chill Designs, um,
Corner pub.
and Corner Pub is back as well. They just re-upped as
Yep.
well. So excited again to have everybody back. We appreciate the partnerships. And then moving on, I did want to, since we were talking about sponsorships,
Yeah.
we have announced, and if you've been living under a rock and not on social media, we have announced that our division draw, probably one of the most pivotal days of the year for
Yeah.
the teams, is going to be hosted again at 1356 Public House on February 4th at 3:30. So we would love to see as many of the players out representing your teams, seeing how your division is going to shake out, supporting a partner of ours. We'll live stream that. We'll have a podcast up in case you can't make it. You can kind of hear how it goes, but
Yeah.
just excited. That's always a fun day, sitting in there
Oh,
talking
love
to the
it.
guys, seeing how their reactions to
Oh, yeah.
who they draw or what division they draw into, and hopefully, Sam, you and I can break up our division a little bit and get some
I know,
get some
right?
some new players, some new teams to play. So
The crazy part is, Brian, it could happen again. Like
yeah,
we're primed for like a 33% chance, it seems like, to get that same division for the third year in a row. But you're right, it is one of the pivotal, dates on the calendar for the SWBL, and it decides your fate basically. Who do you have twice on your season schedule? And that's my favorite part of the year. One of my favorite parts, because then I can jump into the schedule and starting to plan that. And I
right.
always love making the schedule, and it's always kind of a fun puzzle to put together all the pieces. So excited to get that going and excited for February 4th. And like Brian said, everybody come out. I think right now we're having every team represented, which is good. As long as, some things happen with the Yankees, schedules line up and things. And then we have a White Sox joining us, and Derek Cornell. And then we have a couple Marlins showing up this time, maybe not Annie, and
I
actually a
was gonna
Marlin.
say, is
So we'll
Annie gonna
see.
have to represent them again?
No, and to be fair to Eli, the original plan was to do it at noon, but 1356 had to push us back till 3:30. They had a paying customer at noon, so we are a non-paying customer that had later. So
Mm.
it's okay. We appreciate them hosting us for free in their private event space. So thank you 1356 for having us, and we're excited to eat and drink at one of our favorite places in St. Louis.
Yep. All right. One last bit of uh, news, housekeeping. We had a retirement announcement.
Yeah,
Grant Boyd has decided to hang him up.
yeah,
And he had a fantastic career, 10 years in the league, all with the
yep,
Rockies. Rookie of the year, I believe,
yep.
and
First one in the franchise era.
had two championships, if I'm not mistaken, two
Yep.
championships. So just a fantastic career and
Yeah.
big. I'm going to go ahead and say big loss for the Rockies. They go without Grant, they go 2-8, and then
Yeah.
Grant comes back and they make a push for the championship.
Yeah.
And Now they've lost their glue. They don't have the glue guy anymore.
We'll see.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
two glue guys in a row retiring for the Rockies. Breida, belly button glue guy, and then you have Grant Boyd, who arguably, I think I said it on Twitter, is one of the most loved players I think in the league. He's a
Mhm.
guy that you can always talk to, always positive, just loves the league in general. So it's going to be sad to see him go, but he said he wants to come back and visit. But it's just kind of time, and I think for some people, it's going to be like that year over year. We're going to start getting older, going to maybe start having different developments in family that just require us to kind of take the step back. And for Grant, that was now. So we lost both Boyds in the franchise era.
Man. Well, we have like just to echo Sam, we're gonna miss you, Grant.
Yep.
Hope to see you at the Blur. Just to catch up and see how you're doing. So,
Yeah.
all right, well, Sam, let's jump into it. All right.
All right.
Let's again, guys, we're breaking down the top 22 players heading into season 22. We last episode we broke down the players who just missed the cut, who fell off the list, and now we are in that chunk, that middle chunk, 15 through 6.
Yeah.
So, Sam, kick us off with player number 15.
Yeah. I think this is the player, Brian, that last time we were talking and you were surprised, and I tend to agree with you. Surprise was not in that 22 through 16 range. And we'll see if our alignment was correct in our brains. And that player at number 15 is my teammate, Peter Light. Peter Light comes in at 15. You're shaking your head. I guess that is you're in agreement. But
Uh-huh.
Peter had his worst year of his career. He will tell you that.
Mm,
He said in the championship podcast that you hosted that it's funny that he wins the championship on his worst offensive career year
mhm.
ever.
Yeah.
So he had a great fielding year. He was third in the Gold Hands or the Platinum Hands nomination, third in left field for Gold Hands, but he was third in overall as well, statistically. He had his highest ranking was a 9, and it
Wow. Okay.
wasn't from any of his teammates or anything. So it was from, another team's player. And then his lowest ranking was, of course, not ranked. So he had a
Mm,
few not ranked on there as well. But, he kind of sat in that middle range. It was, the low teens, 16, 17, 15, had a couple 13. So 15 kind of falls in line, but I guess people are hoping that he makes that jump and
mhm.
gets back to the MVP of old, because you got to believe it's going to be an off season and, just he'll get back right where he was. And this is his lowest ranking ever. And he has gone down 5 spots from where he was. So,
Okay.
yeah,
Dropped out of that
lowest
top
ranking.
10.
He did.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? To an extent, like, yeah, he's coming off his worst performance ever. Um, if I'm not mistaken, the year before was up to that point probably one of his worst years, which is
Oh,
why
yeah.
he was at 10. But
Yeah.
he is a former MVP, so having him sort of right in the pack, and this is, I think, this highlights the different ways people vote. He probably dropped because of last year quite a bit, but then people
Yeah.
are still keeping him in the top, the top half of this countdown closely. Because if he were to turn it around, he can put up great numbers and be in that MVP caliber or MVP conversation. So if people are voting for not only last year but also what can you do coming in this year, I think people are expecting a bounce back year.
Yeah, got to be a bounce back, and obviously as his teammate, hoping for a bounce back as well. He was our leadoff hitter to start the year for much of the year, and then Brett took that mantle from him. So hopefully, getting in that lower spot, can help him get some ABs, get on the right track, and be back in the leadoff spot for us.
Mm-hmm.
All right, moving on, number 14, and this was the second highest riser from last year's list. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Second highest riser, he rose 7 spots from last year's ranking. Ranked 21st last year, your teammate Cam Smith comes in at 14, up 7 spots from where he was. So a big high jump for him. His best year in the SWBL, bar none. I mean, it was by far his best year on the mound and at the plate. He was a top 10 hitter. He was a top 10 pitcher. So finding him in this 14 range is a little bit interesting, but obviously it's kind of, yes, it is that what have you done for me lately? And that's why he rose 7 spots. But it's also now prove it again before you get into that top 10, right? So Cam definitely making strides. He also won a Gold Glove Award or Gold Hands Award for being a pitcher. So, he's right on the cusp there. We've always wondered when is that year going to come? And last year was a good jump and got you guys back in the playoffs. So Cam Smith comes in at 14.
Good job.
Thoughts
bud.
as a captain?
I'm proud of him. No, I mean, like you said, when he came into the league, there were always really high expectations for Cam. Maybe some of the highest that I can think of for a rookie. And he's always struggled a little bit. Maybe it was a little bit of the pressure. Maybe it was the adjustment to the medium pitch. We know what he can do in fast pitch. And everything. And I'll also give him the benefit of the doubt. He asks me, not that David pushed away from it, but he liked pitching against the tough teams. Like there's something about his competitive spirit that he wanted the Yankees. He was obviously he and David both got the Orioles since they were in the division, but he always liked pitching against the Twins. There's something about him and his competitive nature that I may have done him a bit of a disservice always having him go against some of the better teams and not giving him some of the easier games. But
it's good on him to want to do that and put your team in a position, to possibly steal. And you guys took a win from us last year. So,
right, so hopefully he can build on it and just keep pushing that up.
Yeah. And Cam had a couple unranked for some reason. I mean, it might just be people that were just not, thinking straight. And then he had 3 top 10 votes. 2 of them, his highest ranking were me and Brett actually ranked him the highest out of anybody. So I'll reveal that just because Brett and I are teammates. So I can say that. But all right, moving on to number 13 is another Astro, back-to-back Astros and, brothers. So Cam Smith, Cole Layton comes in at 13. I mean, these two are kind of like the yin and the yang yin and the yang, or the Bash brothers for the Astros, I guess you could say. Yin and the yang kind of too, Cole's a little more reserved than the Cam on the field. But so Cole had went up 2 rankings from his previous year, so 15 to 13 this year. It is his highest ranking. So Cole had another great year to build on the year he had prior. And if he does it 3 years in a row, then he's kind of cementing himself also as a top 10 hitter in the league, which is great for the Astros development for those 2 guys to be consistent like that. So Cole Layton coming in at 13.
Yeah. After the year he had previously, it was pretty much a no-brainer to put him in that number 1 spot, and he never let us down. He had, I think, the second highest batting average. I can't remember. I'd have to look. He's in the top 5.
He is second highest batting
average, and he had the most at bats on our team. So it says a lot about his production there. We know he's got some power reserves. He doesn't seem to come out as often as we expected it to be, but he's just fantastic. And then he showed himself 2 years ago at what he can do in the field, breaking out there. And so he's a cornerstone of our franchise for sure.
Yeah, Cam and Cole both in the top 7 of home runs, and then in the top 9 of RBIs, both of them. So
Yeah.
definitely great for the Astros to have two players that home runs and RBIs. The power numbers are there definitely for them in the future. So they're going to look to contend for another back-to-back playoff with both those guys as top 15 players. So, all right, let's move on to number 12. Speaking of another Smith, we have Mr. Jordan Smith coming in at
Oh,
number 12 for the Marlins, and this is the highest ranking for the Marlins, at least so far, that I can mention. But this is the third Marlin on the list already. We had Josh Anthony and Luke Backula last podcast, and now Jordan Smith. I'm sure you can see the writing on the wall. This will be it for the Marlins on the list, obviously, with those three going.
yeah.
But Jordan Smith coming in at 12. His highest ranking actually was 5. And I will say it was from a player who plays in SWBL and MOWIF. So I don't know if it was just like thinking about his MOWIF prowess too and how good he is, but in the back of that voter's mind. And then it seems like it's a weird coincidence, but this is also a player that had a couple no votes. I guess those people may have forgotten him or what it was, but what's interesting about like the Cole, even though Cole had no votes and Cam had no votes and Jordan had no votes, you take one of those no votes out and then the rest didn't matter because they were so far away from the people around them anyway. The voting really does play out, and that's what I love about the averages and taking off the highest and the lowest. It really does give you a good view of everything. So Jordan Smith coming in at 12, and I think it's deservedly so. You know, he went down a little bit. He digressed. Last year he was the 7th ranked player on the list, and this year he goes down 5 spots at number 12. It was one of the lowest fallers. It was a top 5 lowest faller on our list. But Jordan Smith definitely has still a lot to prove, a great hitter, both fast and medium style. So Jordan Smith is going to be hopefully a long-time Marlin. He is still a free agent though, Brian, which is a little bit interesting that the Marlins haven't tried to wrap him up so far in the offseason. So coming in at 12.
Yep. Yeah, I think you know, this is again another one of those examples of, yeah, he dropped because of a down year, especially after
Sure.
such a great year the year before. But it's also, hey, we think we know what this player can be, and we're
Yeah.
gonna, if he has another down year, then maybe he drops, quite significantly this next time. But
I
yeah,
don't see
and
it though.
yeah, I would imagine at worst he's slightly better than he was this year.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, Jordan and Luke, they both regressed this past year, but they had some teammates that really stepped up, and so maybe they can come
Yeah.
in this year without the pressure of having to, carry the team or be a lot of the production at the plate. They can
Yeah.
really relax and just play their game, and so we'll see if it transpires for them.
Yeah, that's a great point because, Luke himself, I mean, he was number 5 on this list last year. So like having a 5 and a 7 as, top 10 players on your team, probably a lot of pressure on those guys that had never been in that realm before. So
Mhm.
Josh Anthony really stepped up for that team. And, between Eli and Sam Rudnick, I feel like they have a 4th guy that can make a push for that playoff spot. The Marlins really want to get back to it. So,
Mhm.
all right. Coming in at number 11 this year is a former champ, and in the finals past 2 years, the first Yankee on our list, and that is Sam Bakula. So Sam Bakula, the first Yankees player on the list. It is his 2nd highest ranking that he's ever had at 11. He went up 2 spots from 13. Actually, I apologize. That's tied for his highest. He was 11 the very first year we did this list. So tied for his highest. He went up 2 spots from 13 last year. Sam had those power numbers. He was 3rd in RBIs last year. He was 4th in home runs last year. His OPS, he was, a top 8 player. So he has those power numbers, and he delivered last year for the team, especially with Gus having a down year. It was kind of the perfect year for Gus to have a down year because not only Scott winning Triple Crown, but Kevin still having a monster year, 6th in OPS. And then you have Sam Bakula, who's 8th in OPS. So you
Mhm.
have, even if Gus has a down year, these trees just keep popping up
It's
the roots of the
unfair. It's
Yankee.
so
It is.
unfair.
So you got to believe it's going to be really interesting when the captains vote on the preseason power rankings, Brian, and that's probably a whole nother podcast conversation.
Oh
But
yeah.
I mean, do you give it back to the Yankees or do you go with the champs? It's such a tough decision
Yeah,
for that
that
one.
is that is tough. I mean, inside in me, I usually always go with the champs and just give
Yeah,
them the number one out of respect for what they accomplished. And But at the same time,
Yeah.
you're coming off an injury. Peter's coming off his worst year.
PG retired. Yeah.
PG retires, and so
Brett was
there's
not a top
unknown.
10 hitter. Yeah.
There's unknown at that four hole. I mean, we'll have to see how it. We still have
Sure.
free agency to finish out. We still have the draft.
Yeah.
John's not a slouch when actually knows he's going to play. He's not gonna. He's never been a guy that comes in and wows you, but he's going to give it everything he's got, and he's going to
Yeah.
play his role. And if you're doing that as the four hole, it doesn't mean that that's not valuable. So we'll see what happens, but it is tough to take the Yankees out of that number one spot because, man, like you said, when Gus
So
is
good.
having a down year, he's still one of the better players in the league on a down year, and then you've got these
Yeah.
guys just
Who all had
and
better
even
years than
and
Gus.
he yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, Sam even pitched this year, right?
Yeah, he's pitched the past 2 years, I think, against a playoff team and done well.
Yeah.
Like, so
So
they pitch him against a team that knows they're not going to see him in the playoffs. So
yeah. So, he's even bringing value where you don't expect it. So
yeah,
he's a great
yeah.
player.
Sam Bakula, his highest ranking this year was sixth. So he had the
Okay.
highest was sixth. The same player that had Jordan as five also had Sam Bakula as six. So a little fun fact there. So, all right, we'll move on to our top 10. We begin our top 10 countdown, and our top 10 coming in at number 10 is tied for the most championships in the SWBL. Mr. Chris Metter comes in at
Mm.
10. Chris Metter, his highest ranking that he had was third. So he was ranked as high as three. And this is Chris Metter's tied for his lowest. He has been 10 before. He's never fallen out of the top 10. How can you when he's the most, recognized, well accoladed player in the SWBL history? But it's down 2 spots. So it's interesting. His batting numbers have gone down. His fielding has kind of leveled out. He's still an elite fielder, but it's kind of leveled. It's
Hmm.
been plateaued a little bit, and he makes the hard plays look easy. And I think sometimes we don't see him make these spectacular jumps over the wall or anything because it just comes natural. Like it's just
Hmm.
like it happens. So he's a top 10 player. Winning revolves around Chris Metter. Definitely deserves to be a top 10 player. So kicks off our number 10 is Chris.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't have much to add to this. Chris is one of my favorite players in the league. Um, he's obviously a thrill to watch in the field, but he's also a lot of fun to watch at the bat or at the
True.
plate.
You never know what
You
he's going
know,
to do.
you don't know if he's going to slap one oppo, if he's going to go ahead and turn on one. You never know with that lefty too. Like he's always
Yeah.
a danger to stretch. We'll go with a double as we're getting older. Triples used to be the thing, but we'll just say a double, especially with the power bats behind him. He doesn't always have
Yeah.
to do that. So, but yeah, he's a great player and so much fun to watch and definitely deserving of being in that top 10.
Yeah. Coming in again, only 1 point, one measly point separated Chris Metter to the number 9 spot. And the number 9 spot is taken by the Rockies' Blake Spencer. And if you look at Blake's stats from this previous year, I mean, he's top 10 across the board, top 10, a little outside the top 10 in average. But when it comes to slugging, OBP, it comes to his home runs, RBIs, hits, Blake Spencer is a top 10 hitter. He kind of at times has to step up on the mound a little bit too, and just a leader for that clubhouse and an experienced player. He's a 2-time MVP, and Blake Spencer had a better year than he had previously, and it goes up 5 spots. So another high riser. He was 14 last year after a big down year, and Blake was consistently the 8th player on this list for a long time, and then went
Mhm.
down to 14, and now back up into the top 10 for number 9. So Blake Spencer hoping to continue on the path back to an MVP.
Yeah, he took a bit of a back seat this year when it came to um managing the team. He was still the captain and everything, but he let Brian make some decisions, and Brian making even, things like pulling himself out of the lineup, but just kind of letting the team and everybody just chime in and take that on and kind of, obviously he wasn't out on the mound very much like he has been in the past. And so maybe it allowed him to focus on just getting back to himself at the plate. But he's another guy who every year going into the preseason, somebody mentions his name when it comes to the MVP,
Yeah,
because we know that he can do it. He's won it once,
twice,
right? Twice.
2012
Okay.
and
Thank
2013.
you.
He was one of the,
So
yep.
yeah, so he's been there before, and obviously had a huge turnaround with the team in general. So that's always going to help propel you higher up in the rankings, because people are going to think how your team performed and if you were a pivotal piece of that.
Yeah, another fan favorite. I feel like Blake Spencer. People always love playing with him, against him. Such a great guy on and off
Mhm.
the field. So, all right, we'll move on to our number 8 player. Our number 8 player is another Yankee, Mr. Kevin Poley. So Kevin
Mm.
Poley comes in at number 8. Kevin had a top 5 vote. His lowest vote was in the 20s, but was not out of the ranking. But yeah, it was in the 20s. But Kevin goes up 3 spots, and this is his highest ranking he's ever had. Kevin Poley is one of those guys that, at the beginning of his resurgence of a career, I guess, after his Clemson days, when he started kind of slow. It was kind of like, he was Scott's, brother. Like, I hate to say it like that, but like Scott was the guy that consistently was there. But now Kevin is kind of showing that he is his own player, and he's better than so many players in the SWBL now, where he was a mediocre kind of at the beginning of his resurgence of his career, and now has proven he's a top 10 player on both sides of the ball, not pitching, but fielding and hitting. I mean, you can't get anything past him when he's in right field out there. So you got to hit it high and you got to hit it way out, or else Kevin's going to get it. And Kevin is a gutsy player. And when his team needed him to have a spark, I feel like he was the guy that sparked him. And I feel like there's so many games that Kevin did that. So Kevin Poley coming up 3 spots from last year. And he's going to be rising up this list if he continues on that trajectory.
Yeah, I was gonna say I'm proud of the voters. I'm really happy for Kevin that he, like you just said, he has progressed and steadily just gotten every year, just taken
Yeah.
another step, gotten better, and his rankings reflect that. So he's one of the few people that I would say, like, hey, the voters are starting to get something right. He he's definitely deserving of this, and yeah, I mean, who knows, if he keeps taking these, he might be a top 5 player next year. So
Oh yeah. And I mean, he's like Blake. It's top 10 in every single category: average, slugging, OBP. He's got, and we say that about the Yankees, but let's be honest, Brian, when you have 4 guys that are all in the top 10, that's why your team is doing so well, is
yeah.
because all of you are in the top 10 of every single hitting category. So you really got to beat them almost on the mound. You got to
Mhm.
beat them, like, you got to find your holes in. It's, you almost got to get lucky against a team like that. So the Yankees are definitely proving that they are the hitting team to beat. That's for sure. You got to stick with them. But
Mhm.
Kevin Poley coming in at number 8 and brings us to number 7, tied for his highest ranking. This is the 3rd time he's been ranked at number 7. 3rd time has been ranked at number 7, and he's up 2 spots from last year, and that is Mr. Jackson Crosley, which I
Mm.
actually thought was a little interesting, Brian, because he's up 2 spots and he kind of had a leveled out year, if not maybe a little worse, especially at the plate. His pitching is always going to be one. I know that he was on a White Sox team that struggled without Ty, having that, cornerstone fielder and hitter with Ty. And once Ty came back, they went 4-1. Jackson kind of took the brunt of a lot of the losses and things. As you mentioned last podcast, David Olderman joins this team, and his pitching ability hopefully kind of takes some pressure off. And Jackson Crosley will be hopefully continue to improve. He came off a fantastic year on the national scene. He pitched so well for MOIF. He pitched so well for the NWLA tournament for the SWBL Cardinals. Pitched against arguably a top 15 team at United Wiffle and shut them out. For his first time going to that tournament. Jackson Crosley is definitely a pitcher that people know across the country, and he also shows it here in the SWBL, not getting into that top 5, but number 7, nothing to snuff about. So Jackson comes in at 7.
Yeah, this is surprising to an extent. When you're kind of looking at the overall list, I kind of expected the top 10 to be all players from playoff teams.
Yep.
Um, and Jackson sneaks in there at 7 after again, a season that I think the White Sox would like to forget.
Yeah.
But he's again another guy that everybody really loves to hang out with, be around. He's so collected and calm, and and then he gets out on the mound and he's tough to deal with. And I obviously his pitching really carries him on this ranking list. And I think two people are excited about what he's been doing at the plate. And so again, just like maybe a Jordan Smith, where he doesn't have as good of a year as he's had recently, people are expecting him to bounce back and be kind of more along the lines of what we were starting to see,
Sure.
at the end of the Yankees kind of era and all of that, when he started getting more and more consistent hitting. And we know that that's going to be the case again for the White Sox, that he's going to be a staple person in their lineup. So the opportunity will be there.
Jackson has past 3 years had basically identical pitching stats, and he only won Cy Wiffle once in that 3 years. I mean, he's only lost 4 games in 3 years when he's on the mound, just 4. So when you have somebody like that, as your pitcher, I mean, he's basically had the same amount of innings pitched, the same amount of errors, the same amount of strikeouts, the same amount of wins basically every time. The difference, though, between it was he had 135 points up his batting average gone from
Wow.
last year to this year. So if he can turn it around with his bat, you got to believe he's going to be up there as a top 5 player again. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Jackson Krelsley. All right. And that brings us to our final person of the evening, Brian. And then we'll kind of allude to a little bit of the top 5. You can probably guess. Maybe you even want to guess a little bit here. Might be a fun little guessing game for you. But the number 6 player on our list is even from last year, same exact ranking from last year. And it's his second highest one, because at one point after his MVP, he was 3rd, but his Corey McCarthy of the Twins goes to number 6. So he was number 6 last year, stays at number 6 this year. I think one of the few players, I think there's only 2 players on this list, and we haven't seen one of them yet. 3 players, excuse me, on this list, that didn't change their ranking. So Corey McCarthy not changing his ranking. His highest that he was ranked was number 4, and his lowest was 14. So you can tell he's definitely earned the respect of those voters. And when the 14 drops out, I'll give you this clue too, Brian. If you drop the number 14 out, his lowest was 7. So his
Wow.
highest was 4, his lowest was 7. So that's how much respect Corey has gained these past many years in this league. He's won an MVP. Not many people can come into this league and win an MVP in their second, third year that he was in it.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the only player in SWBL history to win National Rookie of the Year, and he continues to prove it year in and year out. So Corey McCarthy just outside the top 5. Surprised?
No, I mean,
Okay.
not when you consider, if you take the person who voted him 14 out, um, and everybody's voting him 4, 5, 6, or 7.
Yeah.
He's right in the thick of the way the voting goes. If I'm trying to think of who's out there still for the top 5, most of those players I think warrant a top 5 slightly more than Corey, just based on really last year, not so much really his career. But it's still a young career too. A lot of these guys who are
Yeah,
going to be in the top 5 have been around for a long time,
for
have
sure.
produced for a long time. And I think it just might be the curse for him for a little while, where he just has to be in the league for longer, to
Yeah.
really to do that. Who knows? Like, he could come back, win another MVP, and then that conversation's over no matter how many years he's played. That's 2
Yeah.
MVPs in 4 years or whatever it is. So he's an impressive player. He's fantastic in the field too. And yeah, he's just great dude and
Yeah.
deserving to be where he's at. So
Yeah, Corey McCarthy, love having him in the league, and definitely a future MVP again. I feel like he's going to break out again and have a good year. So Corey McCarthy coming in at number 6, and I'll do some quick stats real quick, Brian, for you. Everybody who has been ranked so far in the top 22. So in the top 22, every single person, I guess I can say every single person, even the top 5, was ranked, at least their highest ranking was in the top 10. thought that was interesting. So everybody that was out of the ranking did not have a top 10. I take that back. There was one person who gave themselves the number one vote. So, and I think we all know who that is. Besides that person, every single person that wasn't ranked did not have a top 10. And every person that was in the top 10 got at least one top 10 vote. So I thought that was interesting. And then what's also interesting is our top five, every single person, and only these five people, every single one of them received at least two number one votes.
Wow.
Interesting, right?
Yeah. A lot
Yeah.
of parity
So,
there with the
yeah,
voters.
there was two of these players received number one votes. So one of them dropped the other
Mhm.
one. And then I'll just say it, the top three players on our list all received multiples. So more than three top, more or three or
Wow.
more number one
Wow.
votes. So yeah, so it's interesting. You know, there's a number one ranking. We had 18 people vote this year, and you know, those top five, everybody got at least two number ones. So interesting that the way the voters all worked out, and obviously these top five are deserving, and we'll find that out next time.
Yeah. Awesome.
So
Well,
yeah,
yeah, I'm looking forward to finding out those five and just talking about those guys a little bit more and seeing how the
yeah,
voters kind of settled all of the dust with these guys because again, like yeah, they're all going to be,
yeah.
they're all really good players and maybe we just throw them in a pit with a fork and say, okay, you guys can do figure it out who gets to be number one.
And
Actually,
it's
probably I
always
would say that these five players probably don't even care that they're in the top five.
and it's always fun afterwards to break down by team how many
Yeah.
players were in this by team. You know, we've gone through most of this list and we have not seen an A. I mean, if we've been paying attention, and you got to believe they're not going to be one in the top five just based off of previous years. So they are the only team without somebody in the ranking. That's the only
Hmm.
one I'll give away. And obviously, the voters can go back and look and see all the different rankings as we go along. But it's always fun to break down the teams and how many were voted and what do those franchises need to do, whether it's build internally or draft somebody new to get a top 22 player next year, get a top 23 player. That way you can kind of put yourself in those positions. We talked about the Astros with Cam and Cole both on this list, creeping towards that top 10, and both of them were top 10 hitters last year. You have to have those guys on your
Hmm.
franchise if you're going to make some noise. I say that, but they shocked the world once. Could they do it again?
Yeah.
It all comes down to what happens on the field. So
Yep. Yep.
yeah. All
Cool.
right.
Yeah. No,
Should
we
it,
will. I do want to do that at the next podcast. Is just break down the number of players on each team. Um, from the teams with zero or one player to
oh yeah.
the Yankees having all four of their players on the team. So
Suppose maybe Gus flew off the whole list. You never know
yeah,
after
I'm
a
sure
down
he did.
year.
I'm sure he did.
But it's going to
So
be interesting because, obviously we'll talk about this next time, but there's only been two players that have been named number one before. And there's been 4 years of this list. This is the fifth year, and Gus has been number one 3 years, including last year. He was number one after he won the MVP the previous year. So will he hold on to that ranking, or do we have somebody new, or what is it? So we'll find out next time on the podcast. Excited to reveal it.
yeah, stay tuned.
And
All
all
right.
these, Brian, all these
Well,
15 through 6, I'm sorry, I'll tell everybody again, will be released. We'll release the podcast, and then we'll release the list as well, so people can just get a view of it. So this is the breakdown, but yeah, thanks for doing this again, Brian, with us all.
for sure. Well, that's going to wrap up this episode, guys. Again, we've got the last installment of this top 22 players uh, series coming out next, and then we will start. The captains' interviews will start coming out as we get closer to the season. We've got the division draw coming shortly after this series. And we'll get some more content. It'll just keep coming at you so that it builds right up to Memorial Day weekend. So, with all of that, Sam, get us out of here. What are we doing?
All right. We always end these podcasts, Brian, with some special game that I've created for you. Last time we did a blind ranking where I sold you SWBL players that were not Hall of Famers, and you had to blind rank them. And it was fun because at the end, I forgot who it was, but I said it,
Edlow.
like, well,
It was
yeah,
Edlow.
they're number one. Yeah. So you got to have them there. So, and I didn't change it. But this time we're doing a little bit of trivia, Brian, a little bit of
Okay. Oh
trivia.
boy.
I know. And literally everyone before this podcast, Brian said, I really got to pay more attention to the stats page and everything. But this is team stats. So it might be a little, a little bit easier to
Okay.
go by.
Okay.
But there are only 5 teams, and no cheating, Brian, don't look online. There are only 5 teams in the history of the franchise era that have a winning playoff record. A winning playoff record. Can you name the 5 teams with a winning playoff record without cheating? There's only 5 teams.
Orioles.
The Orioles are one of them. Yes, the most recent team. They're 3-1 in the playoffs. There's a lot of history with some of these teams.
I know I'm like the Yankees have been around. They're one of the few remaining original teams, so there's a lot of history there.
2 original teams from 2012. The Yankees and Rockies are the only 2.
Ooh, yeah.
And
both of those teams have won multiple championships. So you'd think that they would be there, but again, they've been in the league for
they've had down years too.
Long time. But down years where they don't make the playoffs don't count.
True.
So I'm gonna go with the Twins / Phillies.
Twins / Phillies barely make it. They're 6-5. 6-5. That is another one. Yes. Let's see if you can do this without any strikes, Brian.
Oh, come on. I just had to get 5. I wasn't around.
Twins.
But I'm going to assume that the Rays have a positive playoff record.
Rays are the only team that are 6-0. They are undefeated. Okay. Undefeated, 6-0. You are right. 3 teams. You have 2 more teams on this list.
It's not us. There are 2 more teams on the list. It's not the Expos.
I apologize to the Expos. Yes, they are the other undefeated team.
Let's go.
The Expos.
That's the trick answer too.
They are 3-0. So I said 6-0. I probably tricked you with that accidentally. When I said the Rays.
They made it the one time they won it all.
Expos are 3-0. Haven't made it since. One more team.
Have the A's made it more than the 1 year they shocked the world? I gotta think that oh crap, you also got those other teams like the Cardinals, but we were not good in the playoffs. Who else was around? The Brewers, they never won a championship.
It's tricky too, because a lot of these teams are 500. You know what I mean?
Like
they're like 1-1 or 2-2, but those don't count though, so
I'm gonna go with the Rockies.
The Rockies are not the last.
Dang it, I was so close.
It was the Yankees are the final team. Yankees at 8-6. So the past 2 years for the Yankees are the only reason the Yankees are positive. So that's a recent bit of history is if the Yankees would not have gone to the championship the past 2 years, they would have been 500 or lower. So Yankees come in at 8-6, the Rockies 6-9. So they have definitely played. They've played in the most playoff games and they won 2 championships, but 6-9 are the Rockies. They went 1-1 last year. Yeah, there's a lot of 1-1 teams. Cardinals were 1-1. The Athletics are 1-1, like you said. Those teams that get in 1 year, they win 1 game and then they lose the next one. So
I did better than I thought I would.
You did 4 out of 5 without getting a strike first. But and you were in between the Yankees and Rockies too. So you have Rockies, not the Yankees, and we'll see what happens. The Twins, if they lose 1 more, playoff game, they're out of this list, and all of a sudden there's only 4 teams. And if the Rockies can go 3-0 from the wild card, they get to 500 too. So a lot of implications coming through, but great job, Brian, on that one. We'll have 1 more game to finish up after the top 5 and team recap for the top 22 list.
Sweet. Thank you. That was fun. All right, fellas and ladies, if you're out there, thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. Bye.
See ya.